Welcome to the Path Podcast. It's March 19th, 2024. My name is Tani. I'm here with Auk.
It's good to be here with you, Tani.
Same, man.
Yeah.
It seems like we were just doing this yesterday. Time is going by at a crazy pace right now.
I think it is. Well, we are recording a day early.
Yes, that adds to the effect.
Did you say it's Tuesday or Wednesday? I think you said it's Tuesday.
Did I say a day of the week?
Maybe not. You just said it's March 19th.
It's a good question.
Yeah.
So, what's new with you?
Let me see. Well, I'm doing I'm doing school tours right now. It's kind of cool. I'm touring schools.
Going back to college, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Not for me, but my older one is headed off to his next phase of his education, and
awesome.
So we were up in San Francisco touring a school up there, and it was in the Tenderloin district.
Sounds delicious.
Yeah, it was. The Tenderloin district is quite colorful, to say the least.
Okay.
I'm not sure it's a place I would want to be outdoors at nighttime, and even during the daytime, it was a little bit scary, at least for me.
Wow.
But man, once we walked into the school is like two giant buildings, and once we walked in, what the school has done with these buildings is pretty cool. So there's some outdoor upper deck type of viewing areas, study areas, entertainment. So yeah, it's a pretty cool how they set the school up there. So I wasn't sure if that was just going to be a confirmed, like, yeah, we're not going to go here, but after we got done, it was actually a contender.
Still on the list.
It's still on the list, and
cool.
I guess that's why people go out and visit schools.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah, it is.
Is that stressing the boy out?
Nah, he's got several different of these schools that he's visiting, so he's taking it in stride. It's he's gotten all his acceptance letters, pretty much all his acceptance letters. So now it's a matter of trying to figure out where he wants to go. So yeah, it could be stressful, but I think it's not a bad choice. So
cool.
We're pretty stoked. Anyways, has nothing to do with bike riding, but that's what I was up to this weekend. It was like a 36-hour turnaround to San Francisco and back.
We could probably tie it into bike riding if we had to.
Yeah, exactly. It did make me. We flew over the Santa Cruz Mountains.
Oh, nice.
And I was remembering back we did that road trip for a Christmas recording.
Yep.
With some of the Santa Cruz folks.
With the syndicate.
Back with Greg Minar and Lucas Shaw and Loris Vergier.
Yep. And we also did the Juliana.
That's right.
We did too. That was awesome.
Team. That was fantastic. And we did some riding in the Santa Cruz Mountains. And
that was a good trip. Remember the stars?
Yes.
On the way up, we stopped.
Oh, yeah.
Some stars, and it was wild.
That's right. And we also passed by the California's largest hospital for the
people who need help.
Who need help,
right. and people who need help bad enough to be a threat to themselves and others.
Yes,
that kind of people.
Yes, it was in the middle.
I thought it was a prison too. Maybe. Right. I think I remember you introducing a term to me. It wasn't a new idea, but I had, for whatever reason, I'd never like really glommed onto the term, and now I still use it sometimes. It's the not in my backyard.
Right, NIMBY. In my backyard, and unfortunately that was somebody's backyard that this place finally got put. So anyways, yeah, that was a great trip, and flying every time I go up to San Francisco area, I always think about riding in those areas.
Yeah.
But speaking of Santa Cruz, shop news, factory sale on Santa Cruz bikes.
Pretty big. Yeah. I've got the list here. A lot, I would say. Blurs, 5010s, High Towers, Rubions, Bronsons, and Mega Towers select builds on sale. Some of them up to 15% off, I think.
Yeah.
Just for example, most of them are more like 13% off, I think. Like Bronson CCX01 Reserve, regularly $89.99, on sale for $77.99.
I saw, and these are 2024s.
These are 2024s that just came out, new colors.
Oh, man.
Yeah, pretty hot.
Yeah. I think the shop even has our bullets on this as well.
That's a different deal. The 2024 bullet was the previous factory sale, and we still have some at that price.
Right.
And it's just the R and the S kit at 5,800 and 69. I think it's 5,800 for the R kit and 6,800 for the S kit.
Right. Yeah, I mean that's yeah. So the bullets are
screaming,
and
that's with EP 801.
Yes.
2024 colors.
Yep.
Yeah.
That is a bike ahead of its time. MX.
Yes. And
it's MX.
We weighed a few bikes before the show, and I think an X01 carbon bullet is right about 50.5 pounds with no pedals, which for a full powered bike with a big fork and everything, that's the 630 watt hour battery helps. But I think that's also smart. They could have put a bigger battery.
They could have, but thinking ahead, that's 50 pounds. It's a 170 travel.
Yeah. What about the Shuttle SL you weighed before the show?
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, first of all, last show we talked about the
Heckler SL.
Heckler SL. And you're saying that's a pretty light bike, and I weighed that one, and it was
42 and a half.
42 and a half
with carbon rims.
With carbon rims. It was a size small, but 42 and a half pounds. That's lighter than my Trance.
Yeah.
Significantly lighter than my Trance.
It's about as light as a pretty fancy Orbea Rise.
Right. Yeah, and so with a little bit more travel?
Yeah, 150 rear, 160 front.
Yeah.
It's kind of the travel and geo and wheel configuration we were turning our Rises into.
Yes. And so yeah, that was 42 and a half, and then you rolled the Pivot Shuttle SL out.
The XTR build with carbon wheels.
And that's like top end.
I think you guessed. You picked up on that I was going to try to impress you with a lighter bike.
And I guess like 41.
Yeah.
And I think it's like 39.6.
Right.
Oh gosh. How?
For a large with no pedals.
But the Heckler SL has no pedals. We're looking at it right now. Sorry, you guys can't.
I want to point out it has a T4 front tire.
Yep. Dissector, front and rear.
So just compared to my Relay, it's probably got 1.5 pounds savings on tires or something.
Oh yeah, because those are probably EXOs. Yep, those are EXOs. No Cushcore.
XTR's light. XTR's lighter than transmission.
Yep. And but it does have a 30. Is that a 34 or 36?
That's a 36.
Oh, that's right. We did say that. That's a 36.
Yeah.
Could be. I don't think you're going to go lighter than that, though.
We are not. But some people, I think this bike spans a ride fantasy that might include someone who would do a Fox 34.
Right.
And get it down to that 30, maybe a couple other lighter moves too, and get it down into that 37, 38 pound range.
Yeah, that's and maybe when you're 36, 37, I hadn't thought about this, and we haven't talked about it on the show either. Like that's a reduced power, so that's Fazua, right? So 60 Newton meters. But you just shaved, 6 pounds off of other even reduced power bikes, like the Relay. And so I wonder if that's starting to make up the difference for power. Because, we said you could do I've done back-to-back rides and, 3,500 feet of climbing, 17 miles, blah, 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 this, that, and the other thing. And we were like, it's probably about, 15% longer on a reduced power. But I wonder if you make up the time when you're riding something like this.
So I think, here's my theory. If you're 100 pounds,
yeah,
I bet that 10 pounds or almost, say 7 pounds of bike weight is like maybe 7% of you.
Yeah,
of
it
you.
is. Yeah.
Where if you're 200 pounds, it's like 3.5%.
Right,
you.
not nearly as much.
So I think that trade-off may matter.
Right.
Who the rider is.
Right.
I really think that, let's say a lighter rider, maybe someone 130 pounds, who just wants a really positive trail experience and isn't going to do anything past like a easy black diamond, say.
Yep.
Like or maybe even not that.
Right.
You could put a Fox 34 on there. You could put even lighter tires. You might not even need 4-piston brakes.
Right.
I would say keep the 4-piston brakes, but you could get it really light for the right rider with the right intended use.
Yep. You could even put like a a DPS instead of a DPX.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
But when you think about it too, yeah, it is amazing. I wonder what the weight comparison is between never mind. I don't know. It's light.
Yeah. So
it's also hard to tell it's an e-bike.
Oh, that's the other. Yeah. Really hard to tell it's an e-bike. Very, very stealthy. The colorway it also helps that it's like a charcoal gray, muted graphics. Yeah, it looks really good.
When people say colorway, sometimes I see HUE.
HUE.
Yeah, it's like a way.
Way.
It's a Spanish word.
Right, exactly.
Nice colorway.
Right. Awesome. I was also weighing the Pivot Mach 4 SL.
Yeah.
Because you guys have
the new one with flight attendant, because that's
Yes.
not the lightest one. The flight attendant adds a little weight, I think.
It does. I think it probably adds a lot of weight.
And you weighed it without its 4 AXS batteries.
I did. And I think it was 24 or 25 pounds.
I think it was 24 without the AXS batteries, and we speculated it might get towards 25 with them.
That's right. 24 pounds. Just a hair under. Yeah, so that bike it's got that new XC flight attendant, right? We just kind of said that.
I want to point out it has a power meter crank.
It has
which adds significant weight.
And that power meter crank is part of the XC flight attendant.
Yes.
So the original flight attendant, like I have the original flight attendant that's on, the Trans SE, giant Trans SE, and that has a pedal sensor, and it just senses rotation.
Right.
And that's part of the algorithm for on, off, whatever. And so now the XC flight attendant has a power meter.
A little more refined measurement of what the rider's doing.
I think so.
It's optional, from what I understand. In other words, you can run the flight attendant without it.
Right.
With lesser, not as good results.
But I wonder if this XC flight attendant, if you could put the pedal sensor in and have it be somewhere in between, so you don't suffer as much of a weight penalty.
I think part of the story with this new XC flight attendant is faster communication. Somehow, I love to recall numbers and have not written them down, but it was like Bluetooth is X speed, and old flight attendant was many times faster than that, and new flight attendant is many times faster than that.
Oh, I see.
So the really quick communication allows
right
the claim the pitch is
less delay.
Right. So it's always doing what it should be doing.
Right. Although I've never felt that harshness even on the old flight attendant.
Now, I think the old flight attendant defaulted to open.
Right.
And closed when it decided that you were pedaling hard.
Yep.
I think this defaults to closed.
Oh, until
and I think if I remember correctly, I don't have my notes with me. I think so. And I think part of the story is we can make it default to closed because it's communicating so rapidly.
Oh, interesting. And maybe because it's XC.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although there was definitely a lot of talk about, no, it's never going to not be open when you want it to be open because of all the different data points it's collecting. And
yeah, I still want it default open. Because I'm not an XC racer anymore.
My closest to comparison was the Fox equivalent, which did default to closed.
Yep.
And it occasionally kind of, I felt like it occasionally was not working when I wanted it to be. But I think it was actually, if it did that less, if it was harder to make it do that,
right,
it'd be pretty cool. Like for the first probably 3 miles I was riding it, I actually really liked it.
Right.
Because it really keeps you high in your travel and makes your suspension feel plush too.
Right. Yep.
There's a lot that I actually liked about it, but live valve, I think, is what we're talking
about.
Right.
It's live valve.
So I almost wonder if it could deliver on the promise. Maybe defaulting to closed is okay.
I mean, I agree.
Yeah, well, I'd like to try it and see.
I'd like to try it too. Let's see. It comes on a SID fork.
Yeah.
So the original one was on a Lyric. This is on the SID.
And this is also way less bike specific. You can just buy a fork and a rear shock that's the right dimensions.
Right.
The other one was really kind of like, this is meant for this bike, and this bike kind of kit specific thing.
Yeah, and it's is it on the SID shock too? It's not a piggyback shock either.
Right, that thing that looks like the piggyback is the
flight attendant,
the computer system on the
Yep.
flight attendant. Yeah.
Yep. So
Front and rear.
front and rear. That particular bike comes with transmission.
Yeah.
That thing is fully.
And transmission's heavier than XTR, as we stated before too. You know, Pivot is, they don't often, they're pretty tight with Fox and Shimano. They have a good relationship,
Yep.
and I think they like philosophically Fox and Shimano. So even just for Pivot to have this spec, I think speaks highly of it.
Yeah. No, you're right. Right. I would get that bike.
I would.
I think Reynolds carbon wheels on there.
Those are DT carbon wheels.
Oh, DT.
Which?
Oh, you're right. Never mind.
No, I'm gonna go look.
All right.
They are Reynolds.
Reynolds carbon
Yep.
wheels. Yep. Geez, that thing is cool. So I have not ridden the transmission.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm a little surprised.
And I haven't felt until today. I was playing with the transmission buttons. What are your observations about the transmission buttons?
I don't hate them, but I do think overall I would go back to the original rocker paddle, which does work with transmission.
Yep.
And actually, I'm going to say that I said that wrong, because the rocker paddle is not the original shifter. Quote unquote rocker paddle is the name SRAM gave to the different like mechanism. It really just the lever part that went on the mechanism to make it feel more like a regular shifter.
Right.
Which I thought was a downgrade. My take on that was that the original AXS shifter is actually kind of the closest thing we were describing to when we're talking about the ring controller last show.
Right.
Where it's just an up-down motion.
Right.
An up-down click, and your thumb nestles in it.
You know, I don't know if I've tried the newfangled rocker pedal.
Yeah, but you have had the original AXS shifter, we liked that one.
That's the original.
Yeah,
that's the only AXS shifter I've ever
So
had.
This is two buttons instead of an up-down rocking motion, and as we discussed on the last show, I prefer an up-down rocking motion.
Yep, I do too.
But that being said, the buttons are located in a way that if you're used to SRAM shifters, they sort of make sense.
Right. They are very positive.
Well, there's the XX button system and the XO button system, there's a couple different button systems that don't share the same tactile feel.
So this must be the XX, considering the bike that it's on. Yeah. And the XX is very positive.
And they're all pretty positive.
Yeah.
But the XX is definitely different, special.
I kind of feel like, again, I haven't ridden it, so if I was tired, I don't know if I would want it that positive. Or if I was deep in the pain cave trying to keep up with somebody, I don't know if I want it that positive.
Right. I just feel like up or down is always easier to find than a button.
Especially with that little curved,
that
you can nestle your thumb in.
Yeah, maybe I will. I have two bikes with transmission right now. I bet I could get good money for the shifters on there and put original AXS shifters on them.
Right.
They're also cleaner. The original AXS shifter, I think, is cleaner looking too.
I think so too.
Because the button system on the new, it kind of stands off of the bar pretty far. You can really see that pad that it's on.
I think you can get a new transmission with, maybe it's not the same rocker paddle.
You can order the original shifter still, and it works with transmission.
Right. But I was looking at the SRAM website. They've got a whole bunch of different shifters, all in kind of this.
Oh, and blip buttons.
Blip buttons and rocker paddles and rocker paddle ultimate, and there's always an ultimate version.
Yeah.
So thought that was very
beyond ultimate.
So yeah, that Pivot Mach 4 SL is impressive.
I didn't know you were like feeling XC bike lust lately.
Yeah, I wasn't until I saw that thing.
Nice. That's what we're here for.
That's all the hot new stuff is at the new shop at 649B.
Well, that, and you still have to take my Switchblade bike.
Yes,
out.
I do.
Yeah, you were asking me before the show if I have tried transmission,
Right.
and I have it on my relay and on my Switchblade.
Oh, yeah. I think the Switchblade would be the easier one to reconfigure. You're running a coil shock. Oh, no?
To
On your relay-
reconfigure
on
the
your-
shifter?
On your relay? No. What are you running on your
Oh,
relay?
for you to ride the suspension. Yeah, you can't ride my relay.
At least not right now.
Big boy shot. Big boy spring.
Big boy spring. We used to be able to. But
Yeah.
not right now.
Yeah, we used to be more or less within 10 pounds of each other a lot of the time.
Right. But yeah, that transmission. Oh, I'll just put it out there on the show, not committing to it. But what if we had a segment of a show where we kind of had the bike, and I'm not sure, we'd have to talk to Jake about this, where we could have a bike and we could just walk through it, walk through the setup, walk through what's interesting to us, and just have that be a part of a segment of the show, and then splice that in, and then have us could also then go on with the regular.
We'll play around with that.
Back to your regular programming, because we sort of just did it right now
But we would make it so you could see the bike somehow. Maybe.
as we were walking, as we were talking on it.
It's an idea.
But
I like it.
Could do new bikes. We could do our bikes.
As long as we're talking show ideas, we still take listener questions too.
Yes, and I apologize. I haven't been putting out, hey, send me your listener questions on my.
But you don't need to wait for Auk to ask you. You can just send them
You
to
could
Auk.
just send it to us. Yes. So I had a question, and I actually it's related to shop news. April 6th is Family Day with Elliot Honeycutt.
Yeah, that's going to be a big day.
I think so.
I got word that the older kids from the Laguna Canyon Foundation are going to do their ride
Nice.
from the same start point and kind of like come say hi.
Oh, nice.
That should be cool.
Yeah. So who is Elliot Honeycutt, and why do we think it's going to be?
So Elliot has been coming in with his dad. Elliot's I forget how old he is exactly, but he's a young fella.
I think he's like 4, maybe.
Maybe he's 5 now.
5?
Yeah, he's
Kind of
a
in that
young
range, yeah.
just graduating from push bike not that long ago, kind of.
Right.
Just so stoked,
Right.
and such a shredder, and
Right.
like charges so hard. And his dad and brother ride with him. His brother is like a teenager,
Okay.
and I think currently holds some KOMs at Oaks, like
Nice.
fast rider
Right.
too.
Right.
And Elliot's kind of captured everyone's imagination on Instagram. Like he gets like millions of views and stuff. on his reels. But we're lucky enough to be able to be one of their kind of like sponsors.
That's cool.
They were at team night, I think, maybe. I'm not sure.
Oh, there you
I
go.
wasn't able to make it to team night this year.
Yeah.
So that's been awesome for us, being able to have any participation in that story is
yeah.
awesome. And just even watching the videos is so fun.
Yeah,
Like,
it is.
you can easily see why they
Gets
some,
me stoked
Yeah,
to go ride watching Elliot.
it is contagious.
It is contagious. So April 6th, check out our website, the Path website. There'll be information on there. I think 9:30 to 12:30 at the Oaks. And yeah, it should be a great morning. But what I was going to ask too, it kind of got me thinking is, how do you choose a bike for kids, and what are some of the thoughts, and for maybe anywhere between 5 and 10 or 11, and just getting into it for the first time? What are some questions that people could ask? Obviously, come into the shop and and have conversation here. Wheel size,
Yeah.
blah blah blah, price points.
Okay, so wheel size, I feel like your first bike is going to be probably either 12 or 16-inch wheels.
Okay, and
When
that's
you're
probably
like just like past toddler.
right.
At some point, you'll probably get a 20-inch wheeled bike, which usually we're a little on the shorter side of my family. And 20-inch wheels usually were good for my kids until they were like 7 or so.
Okay.
6 or 7.
So maybe like first, second, third grade.
And if you're a tall kid, who knows?
You're probably right.
Or a really, really short kid.
Right.
24-inch wheels come next. Usually that's like my kids usually graduated from 24-inch wheels when they were about 9.
Right. So still in elementary school, maybe-ish.
From there, you'll go to either a junior type bike with maybe 26-inch wheels or maybe just an extra small adult bike with 27 and a half.
Right.
And I think you can usually do that somewhere around 4'8".
Right. So 4'8".
4'8".
Yep.
And then
adult extra small.
I remember when my son got his 20, he graduated to 24-inch wheels. And he's like, Dad, what size is my new bike? And I was like, well, it's got 24-inch wheels. And he's like, 2 foot.
Oh, God.
I thought it was awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah.
I think you still have to consider like ride fantasy and also just who's your kid.
Right. Like, are they going to charge it?
Are you going to go ride like Peters?
Right.
And Irvine Park?
Right.
And maybe the flatter trails around Aliso and maybe Dripping Cave?
Mm-hmm.
Or are you going to go ride like Rocket and harder trails? And
right.
I think that affects the choice. A lot of times with kids' bikes, a lot of them don't come with a suspension with an adjustable spring and a damper.
Right.
So it's really
take the edge off.
A lot of the forks, a lot of the suspension forks that the kids' bikes come with are not really suspension forks. They're like bumpers that are heavy,
right,
and springy.
Right.
So if you actually want your kid to have a good performance, I think a thing to look for is like an air fork with an oil damper in it.
Right. No, that's a good point.
And those tend to be more in that like $600 to $1,000 range,
right.
Less in that $400 to $600 range.
Right.
So usually.
The challenge I feel like with that 24-inch bike is I feel like kids will sprint through the size of that.
Yep. Some kids can skip over that, especially if they milk the 20-inch. Well, it's way too small for them for a while.
Right. Yeah.
So my son is 15, and I think I came to the realization that he's now outgrown his small Fathom 27.5.
Right.
And
because he might be almost as tall as you.
Any week now he's gonna pass us. Yeah.
Right.
He's gonna catch and pass us any moment.
We're like medium bike size. He could be a medium.
And if he doesn't. He's so busy with school and sports right now that he doesn't really ride his bike. So I can almost see him not getting another bike till he's ready for a large, because he might be a little taller than us.
Right.
Which would be cool.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So then you kind of mentioned price point too. You like if you're into that $600 to $1,000 bike price point, that's a pretty good entry point.
I also think kids' bikes are a more interesting used value proposition than adult bikes sometimes, because especially on that 24, like you said, they outgrow it so fast. A lot of times it's still got a little life left in it.
Right. Especially
if they're not riding a lot.
Right. That's a good point. Now might be a good time to kind of check that out too in the used market, because the used market, it's a buyer's market.
Yeah, it is. I think more and more we'll see how that goes. I think we're starting to see values come. They're still really, the values on the used market are still really low. Like trade-ins, when we do it, we take trade-ins, and
right.
When we always joke lately, like, okay, I'm gonna give you your trade-in value, but like, don't hurt me.
Right.
But it does seem like those values have stabilized at least and have started to maybe come up. You know what's going on is that vast amount of bikes that got sold in pandemic era. Those are mostly 2020 bikes. And 2021 bikes.
Sure.
And at this point, it's normal that those bikes have a lower value.
Right.
It was when they were only a year old or 2 years old,
right.
And when we were used to a market where people were buying people were buying, savvy riders were sometimes buying bikes and selling them at a profit.
Right.
Used bikes at a profit because that's how tight the market was, right? Like,
yeah.
So I think there was some shock when it went the other way. And I think I kind of theorized that on like a 2023, the values aren't so shockingly low. They're not, they're almost back to pre-pandemic type values, I feel like, or like getting closer.
Sure.
And probably that's where we'll land, is back more pre-pandemic, I think.
Right. Yeah, that's no, thank you very much. I've got, I actually took a picture of the little poster over there, little handout of the family day. I'm going to send it to a friend of mine. That's kind of what got me thinking on this. So I'll send him that. And so if you're out there, Auk's friend, show up on April 6th, and anyone else. So that'll be good times.
Yep. Other news, Over the Hump starts April 30.
Man, that's coming up
so soon.
We're a quarter of the way through with the year.
I can't believe it.
Oh gosh. Anyway, I was just saying we were 10% of the way done with the year. Now we're like 2 months past that.
Can I go back to the thing on transmission on my bikes?
Yeah.
I really, really like it.
Yep.
It shifts under load like you're supposed to do it.
Yeah.
Because you are. Which, for me, it's interesting that it's one of those I need to form new habits. I have to think of my natural inclination from 25 years of having to do so is if I shift, I back off the pedals.
Right.
So I have to actually tell myself to keep pedaling hard.
Right.
And in order to make it shift under load well, there is a little bit of a lag because it waits for the shifting gate on the cassette.
You have to keep pedaling hard.
I feel like that little bit of lag is kind of a pro-con that almost makes it not better than the old system, unless you remind yourself to keep pedaling hard.
Just like fully committed both ways, up
Just
and
shift
down,
and keep pedaling and don't think about whether it made the shift or not even.
Right.
Which is a little bit hard, like it's a leap of faith.
Yeah, right.
For us. And not just
and on an
intellectually,
e-bike.
but like our like muscle memory.
Yeah.
Right. So that's been something that's been on my mind a little bit while riding it, is like just to like keep pedaling, kind of like when head angles kept getting slacker and we had to keep telling ourselves to move our hips forward.
Right.
Just like, oh, slide forward.
It's okay. It's
like,
okay.
Yeah.
Like, really? Okay, I guess. Or like on your EV, on your electric vehicle, the regenerative braking.
Oh yeah, trusting that. Take a minute. Yeah.
I don't have one, but as recounting the story you're telling about how much that really does work.
Man, as long as you brought it up, there's a lot of debate about EVs and stuff, like are they greener and all that.
Right.
And I think it would be cool if they were greener. I don't know. I think it's hard to get like a net measurement. Or I do think that as we figure out ways to have more sustainable energy production, they're part of a bigger picture of becoming. Obviously, I mean, there's human and environmental problems with the batteries for sure, and I don't think we figured out how to. I'm not a blind advocate of EVs, as in I think I see a lot of their downsides, but I will tell you, I am pretty sure if you drive one for 6 months, that's what you'll buy for your next car. Like the driving experience to me is so good, and even just like a small side note of it is that when you really get used to not having a transmission in your car, because none of the EVs have a transmission, feeling your car shift feels kind of archaic.
Oh, interesting.
And almost like it's struggling. Like there's almost a sense of like is it okay? Like you okay there, buddy? Like and like I mean I've half my vehicles have been manual. Like I know how to shift a car and everything.
Right.
Like, but still, and the lower maintenance is the amount that the maintenance is lower is kind of unfathomable.
Right.
Like you just don't
oil
do
changes
maintenance
and brakes and
and like rear diff and radiator. These systems don't exist
Right.
No transmission service doesn't exist.
Right. But maybe you just need to put aside that money, because when you do need to do the maintenance, it's going to be...
You mean a new battery?
New battery.
Yeah.
Or motor.
I think the motors are outrageously durable. I mean, I think electric motors...
Like million-mile motors or
maybe,
something like that.
Yeah, maybe.
Right.
I mean, I think if you think of like, I've had fans from like the 60s that still work great with no maintenance. Like,
true.
I think the batteries are going to be a problem more from a recycling standpoint. I think that
price may be coming down as they actually...
Yeah, and if it's a once every 125,000 or 150,000 mile proposition,
yep.
You could save that up, I guess.
Yeah, totally.
Or
just
most people don't keep their cars that long. Honestly, the people I know, I sometimes do, but most people you sometimes do, but
right.
You do,
right?
But a lot of people don't.
I know.
And I also think that battery thing is people hear the dealership price, but like the dealership prices are expensive on a lot of things.
Yeah, that's true. No, that's true. Yeah, no, that's true. So how did we get onto EVs? It's
just on my mind. I don't know.
No, we made a transition somewhere. But any other news? I have
another thing that's just been on my mind.
Okay.
So a lot of times when I'm talking to people about bikes in the shop,
yep,
I will say something like, "Oh, this one manual's better than this one," and they'll just look at me like, "You think I'm manual, don't you?" Like,
right.
And you know, a manual could be lifting your front wheel an inch off the ground.
Right.
I think I've been thinking, because I've been engaging in these conversations in the shop, and then I think about them, right. And all the different things that you do on the bike where picking the front wheel up a little bit matters.
Right.
And even and some riders really don't ever try to pull up the front wheel, but you could almost, to a degree, this isn't perfect science, but you can almost tell how fast of a rider someone is by how much they do that move.
Right. Even if it's not the manually...
just pick their front wheel up even an inch off the ground.
Bit.
And I'm talking about, and then I got to thinking about, you ride off a curb.
Yep.
You pick your front wheel off the ground.
Or at least you...
Up a curb.
You pick your wheel up.
You ride off a 3-foot drop.
Yep.
You pick your front wheel up off the ground. You're in the middle of a downhill, and all of a sudden there's a new rut that wasn't there last time coming across the trail. You pick your front wheel up off the ground.
Yep.
Or something gets a little weird, and you really, really want to be like 4 inches to the right.
Yep.
You pick your front wheel up off the ground and move it over to the right a little bit and scoot your butt over to the right leg.
Yep. Or even on like a rock roller. What do you do at the bottom generally? It's not the manualing, but it is the same motion of unweighting to get that front wheel.
So if it's a steep enough transition that it might catch your front wheel, I think what you're getting at, and I agree with, is the ability to pull up on that front wheel and have it make a difference could be the difference between going over the bars and rolling away from it, right? Like,
or even if it's not the difference maker, the ability to ride that smoothly and like quickly, right? Smooth and quick, you're gonna do that motion.
But also, let's say you're riding parallel to the sidewalk on a neighborhood road by your house, test riding your bike. You see a car coming the other way, and you decide you're going to go up the neighbor's driveway onto the sidewalk, kind of like at an angle against that little 2-inch, 1-inch ledge at the end of the driveway. And your front wheel comes to that. You pick your front. Do you ever remember?
How many people do you know who have gone down because they didn't pick up their front wheel on that driveway?
That's what I was going to say. Especially with like skinny tires.
Oh my gosh!
You see the front wheel like just skid out from that. And,
boom!
Right.
Oh, how'd you crash? I was just going up my driveway.
Yeah.
You know that.
And most of the bikes that we're talking about being harder to manual they could probably eat that driveway edge.
Right.
But there's the equivalent on the trail left and right.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And so that manual motion is, how often do you think you do that? Gosh, you must.
Well, I remember riding. Remember, we used to ride the steeper trails in Laguna with different people. Right, and I remember it had been kind of me and you and Nathan and some other people riding them. And then I rode them with this guy named Skelly.
Oh, right.
And he was a really good dirt jumper, and he could do like Superman cans and such crazy stuff.
Right.
But there was this big rock slab that had kind of a G out in the middle of it.
Right.
And it was pretty sketchy and rough and kind of not that comfortable to ride.
Right.
But fun.
Right.
Rowdy.
Yeah.
And I remember following him down and seeing him just kind of unweight over that and seeing how it smoothed everything out. Right. Like,
right.
It's like, it reminds me of that. But
it was probably that very similar motion of.
Yeah. It's interesting. I do think that it's something that if you don't do it, maybe start.
Yeah.
Like, think about like a spot on the trail where it might help you to pick your front wheel up off the ground and try it. Like,
right. I do think also that the motion of unweighting and then re-weighting, the manual, you're unweighting and then you don't just let the wheel like flop down, right? It's this unweighting. It's like this unweighting and then like that lightning to set that front wheel on the. I think that whole motion is part of what you do, that lifting that front wheel off an inch or manual or whatever. It's the bringing it back down as well. You're doing that. I think you're doing that all the time on the trail.
Yep. And if you're getting getting to the point where you're trying to like, say, pump a steep transition,
right,
you might pick your front wheel up before the transition so that you can weight it down into the transition. Right. Like,
and it's So that's a great skill. Hey, you must be doing that on. Okay, just say coming down, even on chutes, say, at the Oaks, you come down the steeper part of the chutes.
So the waterfall at the top of chutes, there are 3 kind of G outs.
Yep.
And if you just kind of pick your front wheel up off of them, you pretty much just get back onto the back of the transition and smooth out all 3 of those. If as you ride off the top of each one of those G outs, you kind of unweight and pick up your front wheel, you can kind of weight right onto the back of those and smooth out that whole section.
Correct.
And then
that's at least, that's 3 at least.
I don't think I'm picking up the front wheel again much until that drop that you can go around. That's like a little gap, step down.
See, I would say right after that waterfall, you get into the little straight and then like a little chicane.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get the 3. There's like a little roll.
There's a little step up to the right. There's a hit that you can jump off of and make it a step down.
Yep.
I feel like I ride that by wading into it. Like I just push down on my bike as I get into that, and it launches me down onto the. Like I don't bunny hop that. I like compress it.
Right. I see. Right. Because you ride at it and then compress down it.
Compress into the transition and pops you up over to the top.
Yeah.
More like hitting a park jump.
Yeah. No, that's true. And same with the next 2. Yep.
The next 2, you kind of, if you're going fast, you kind of got to be careful not to overshoot them.
Right, exactly. Yep. And then you come through and that, either you go off there's a jump, and then if you go to the.
But also at the bottom of the trail right now, something about all those little double rhythm jumps, I've just been manualing those instead of jumping them, some of them, especially the one out of that hard ride. I just haven't felt like I'm sure I have the speed, and there's not really a consequence, but I just want to keep it smooth. And,
Yep.
That feels smooth too.
Yep. Okay, so now you come up over the rise. There's at the kind of after the little step down, and then you do the little climb up to the top of the little hump before you get down into. I think we used to call it Johnson and Johnson or something like that. Mm-hmm. Like even riding through the baby heads, you're not. I feel like there's a whole bunch of like unweighting.
I mostly blast that section, but knowing that I could. helps me have the confidence to do that.
Right.
There was a section that I definitely pick up my front wheel on that I just, so after that, there's a sweeping left turn.
Yep.
And then like a couple more turns. And then there's another left turn that's kind of hard to maintain speed in. And that turn takes you into the kind of dangerous trail crossing with new chutes.
Yeah. Totally.
But that one left, there's kind of a berm there, and you come into it hot, but somehow it's hard to keep speed in it.
Yeah.
I almost always pick up my front wheel and pull it to the inside of the turn in that turn.
Right.
Or if I'm able to maintain enough speed, pull my front wheel up into the turn, and then there's like a little double you can gap over from there.
Yeah.
But that's hard to maintain enough speed for that.
Yeah,
and that's
for
hard
sure.
for me right now.
For sure. Yeah, no, that's so true. Hawk is like that too, the start of Hawk. Yeah.
There's a bunch of weird geoffs that if you manual over them, it smooths it out a little bit.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Or you just,
that
if you're not
initial
manualing,
shoot.
if you're just lifting a little bit. Yep. That's where I saw the worst crash I've seen. I caught it on film, and the guy walked away from it. It was, didn't lift his wheel up over any of them. And so he started doing this thing, right? There's about 3 little...
Did I tell you I ran into Blake out at Oaks? Remember Blake from the race team, Blake Ray?
Oh, yeah.
Did I tell you I ran into him at Oaks? So I ran into him. That was awesome. We rode together. He was on a specialized e-bike.
Yeah.
Kid rips still.
Yeah.
We ended up riding a couple trails together, and he had a full-powered e-bike, and he was like manualing over those sections at the top of Oaks like he was on a BMX bike. Right. And I think I chased him down that trail. I think he KO'd it that day. And I didn't, but I got some lines off of him and had for me a pretty fast time.
Nice.
And that was fun. And then I ran into this guy, Nick, that's just a Tustin person that I've known his family forever and stuff. And he would ride Silverado. He knows Jesse. He would do the sprocket head rides back in the day. And he rips too. I ran into him at Oaks, rode with him, got home and looked at Strava. He KO'd it and beat Blake's time.
Oh my gosh.
And so they've been like back and forth.
Oh my gosh.
That trail is so wide open right now. It's like a freeway.
Yeah.
Some people would say sanitized.
I wonder if
we ran into Winston too.
Oh, at the Oaks?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So Joel and I ran into Jeff Young at the Oaks a few weeks back.
Oh gosh, dude.
And Jeff was like, so you can say it. This is a self-applied nickname.
He is.
He can say it
because he applied it to himself.
Yep. Some people call him Brother Young.
Some people call him. He calls himself.
He's an enthusiastic guy. We love him.
Gosh.
He's been a customer since early days.
Yeah. And he's been running.
So we ran into him at the Oaks, and his Strava, he had ridden every trail at the Oaks twice on a muscle bike. He has one of those digits.
Oh, yeah.
Those are really cool.
Yeah.
So Jeff is like, man, I ran into Winston in Laguna, and I was like, hey, Winston, you remember me? And Winston was just like, nope.
No. Whoa, dude.
We thought that was pretty funny. Like, we all used to ride together quite a bit.
Yeah.
So that was awesome.
Oh man. Didn't Jeff used to have
Joel and I ran into Winston at the Oaks.
At the Oaks.
I guess Joel asked him about it. Winston was just like, I don't know. It was a long time ago.
I don't know. I ran a lot of Asian people.
Oh, gosh. I don't think it was racial.
I'm kidding.
Maybe. You never know.
No. Yeah, I ran into I can't believe you ran into Winston at the Oaks.
I know.
That's an interesting
legend.
Yeah.
Legend.
Oh my God.
I remember Winston is the first person that ever introduced me to a Stan's no tubes kit. He ordered one online and brought it into the shop. He's like, what do you guys think? You want to install it for me? Cool. Okay.
Wow.
That's how I remember it anyway. I'm pretty sure I'm right.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, didn't Jeff used to have a Ellsworth, California ID?
He did.
Yeah. So did Joel.
Yeah.
I think Winston might have had
He might have.
an ID.
I remember riding that bike at the trade show and just being blown away with how it ate the bumps and still was light.
Yeah.
And in retrospect, I think that bike had a 70-degree head angle
Oh
with 26-inch wheels, which are
Right,
twitchier too. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I wonder, man, an aluminum bike that light, if you rode it, if you rode it like you rode?
Well, it had a lot of travel for the time, so people would buy it to ride gnarly stuff.
Yeah.
And it weighed, I think we were building them up at like 26 pounds or something.
Yeah.
Those anode finishes were super. The shot peened anode finishes, they were kind of do really cool things with shadows and light and hold up super well.
Yeah. I wish they'd do that more. Shot peen anode. No one does that much anymore.
They don't.
Yeah.
I wonder why. I think it's just out of style.
Yeah.
It's expensive, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, also too, carbon. You wouldn't do that to carbon.
Of course not. But I mean, you've got some aluminum bikes coming back.
Yeah.
The TR11 in the shop is pretty impressive. I had a blue Joker. That could have been one of the coolest, like, head badge, laser etched Joker.
Yeah.
On the front there.
The Joker was my personal first full suspension bike.
Oh wow.
Yep, it was. I had the British Racing Green one, size small.
Yeah.
So some mistakes being made. Maybe I think I would have been better on a medium.
I had a medium. It was way too stiffly sprung for me though early on. Yeah, Romic.
Yeah, those were really
the
cool.
Romic twin tube.
That's Darren from Push's Baby before Push.
Yep.
Lots of history there.
Yep. Started with V brakes.
Yeah, that's wild.
But let's see. I saw the shop's got the 2025 Spurs in. Those bikes are
really cool colors.
Really
UDH
cool.
UDH,
yep.
And other than that, it's the same spur that everyone loves.
Yep. I saw that, and again, I'm behind the times here, but Swiss 240 EXP hubs.
Yeah, that's just basically the new way.
Yeah,
it's almost
the
like
same star ratchet, just not double springs. I was just reading about it.
Still star ratchets, not double springs. I don't think it's the same part.
Right. It is not the same part.
It's not literally the same star ratchet.
It is not the same star ratchet. That is very true. It is not the same star ratchet.
But it's very much the same concept and not a big departure.
Right.
More refinement.
Yep. I mean, it's less parts, one less spring. Seems like a great move. I mean, my 240s are probably going to last me my life because they're so reliable.
I should check my work before I say this, but I think it fixes the problem that DTs would have where sometimes if you did need to replace the inner star, it pedaled in harder and harder.
Oh, yes.
So it'd be really hard to get out sometimes.
You're right.
I think maybe
they fixed that.
And some really big guys would thread them in so hard that it would burst the hub shell.
Right.
Some I think Surge did that.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And this is a lot of old names going on. Not that they're old, but
just all the regulars from the original Path Sunday ride.
That's right. Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Speaking of KOMs, so we talk about Joplin from time to time, and I don't know. I feel like if you're riding a sub 15, that's a pretty semi-respectable. That's actually more than semi-respectable. That's decent. I think the last time I moved down it at what's your personal record on that?
I don't remember for sure, but I want to say like 11 or 12 or 13 or something.
Yeah. See, I think the last time I rode down it with Andrew. We weren't pushing it hard, and this was our first kind of ride with each other, and he was kind of like, I think, taking a little bit easy, and I was like, oh, this is cool. It was like nice little like mellow ride down. I think we were just under, I think we were 14, just maybe right around there. So we were moving decently, but so you figure.
How many minutes of that do you think you spend pedaling less than 10 miles an hour? Like slightly uphill or uphill?
Yeah. I don't know. There's a couple spots in the middle.
Yeah, I think maybe a minute or 2 or 3.
Yeah.
And I think my personal best time might have been on a downhill bike.
Oh my gosh.
where I definitely wasn't making good time there.
Right. Yeah.
No, I think it was on a tall boy, actually, now that I think about it.
Which you didn't have to, you didn't have to pedal super hard up those, and you were making good time, and it kept you fresh for the downhills. Yeah.
A couple things. I think that's an e-bike, or is that not an e-bike time?
That's a good question. I think it might be an e-bike.
Because,
it's under 8 minutes.
He might have an even faster e-bike time. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
That's something to maybe check out. Because I remember at New Year's party him talking about a time in the low 7s or under 7 even maybe.
Oh my God.
And maybe with an e-bike,
I mean,
here's the thing. Being fresh at the top is a big deal.
It is.
I was thinking about this. I've been riding Oaks on my relay and on my switchblade back and forth.
Right.
And the relay has a bigger fork and a slacker head angle and more travel. But I think the biggest difference in how I ride the trails is that I'm fresher on the relay.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure on Joplin that makes a world of a difference. I mean, you're, 20 miles into 4,000 feet of climbing ride.
It kind of goes back to our previous conversation. The more tired I get, the less I pick up the front wheel.
Yeah, that's true.
There's a direct, you can make science out of that. I guarantee it.
Yeah, no, that's true. But man, 757, that is outrageous.
It's booking.
That's booking.
I've heard it's pretty open, and I heard the rocks are all out of the creek bed, which kind of bums me out a little bit.
Right.
Maybe. I shouldn't say I haven't ridden it that way.
Yep.
Something, but also too, people who complain about the trails getting too sanitized, they'll get rough again.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they'll get overgrown again.
Yeah. So that's, I wanted to know, now that we're on daylight savings time, started at 4:30 and I rode until 6:30 or something like that. It's fantastic, right? I mean, so I was thinking we could get out at if you got out at 4:00, you could be done with Joplin before dark on an e-bike.
Yeah. Hopefully you don't get any mechanicals.
That's true. So that spring is up. Spring is here, right? It's
crazy.
Spring is here.
Feels really good.
Yeah, I love it. What type of maintenance should people be thinking about on there? I mean, is now a good time to bring their bike to the path? Are you guys super busy? Not quite yet.
Not quite yet. I mean, we're really busy in service, but not behind yet.
Right.
In other words, we're still turning jobs around in 2 to 3 days or less.
Yep. So try to get ahead of it. If you want to get your bike in here, what should we be thinking about doing maybe?
You can always come in for just an inspection.
Yep, that's a good idea.
And I think we charge $45, which goes towards your service if you get a service with us.
Got it.
So it's basically free if you're going to do $45 worth of work, and you can pick and choose what we recommend, and we can talk to you about the trade-offs and consequences and benefits. And I think that a few things. Most people don't service their suspension as often as the maintenance interval. Right. And your fork especially will feel better when we maintain it, we clean the air spring piston and we replace the foam rings that are under the seals and relubricate them. Both of those things really add to how smooth and plush the fork feels, a lot.
Right.
So getting that service done prolongs life for your stuff, and more importantly, it actually makes a difference in how your bike feels in a really good way.
Yeah, for sure.
And I would say that's something that Fox and RockShox generally recommend doing once a year or every 100 hours of use, whichever comes first, because it needs it if it sits too.
Yeah.
While we're in there, we also inspect the damper, it's tough to say for sure how the damper is working. You can tell if it's really blown.
Right.
But if there's maybe just a little bit of oil loss and maybe just a little bit of air in there or whatever, it's tough to tell for sure while you're also feeling the air spring and stiction of the fork and everything. But once the lowers are off, it's really easy to tell if the damper is still functioning the way it's supposed to.
Right.
And so that's also kind of almost like a safety check.
Right.
Because your damper not working well is hurting your traction, hurting your actual ability to control your bike.
Right.
So I would say fork service and rear shock service. The air can service is pretty inexpensive.
Right.
And because the rear shock's under so much leverage, it's harder to feel the stiction. So it's not as obvious getting the lubrication on the same story. You get a lubrication on the air piston. If you think about how tight that has to fit to hold air, having it be well lubricated is important.
Right.
So that I think it's a good time to measure your chain and see if you're likely to be doing damage to your drivetrain from running a worn out chain.
Yep.
Particularly if you have brakes with dot fluid, and I think it's good to bleed them, at least every year or two.
Right.
Even if they're still working pretty well, the dot fluid absorbs water, so the performance is deteriorating over time for sure.
Yeah.
Especially at heat. And I'd say inspect the tires and see if there's like
cracking
threads
or
showing,
anything like
cracks,
that.
And make sure you're happy with your tread level.
Yep. No, that's all good. That's all good stuff.
Double check your brake pads. Most brake pads have a minimum suggested thickness.
Mm-hmm.
Or just look and see if there's that gray pad material still on there.
Yeah.
And an underestimated one, we see a lot of people whose rotors are below the minimum thickness.
Oh, interesting.
You can measure your rotors with some digital calipers and check against the minimum thickness that is published by the manufacturer.
Great.
In many cases, it's 1.6 or is often the minimum thickness for like the 1.8 rotors.
Right. Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff to do. On an annual basis, it's well worth the safety as well as performance of your bike.
Yeah, and if you get a bike out that you haven't ridden in a long time, check the headset.
Yep.
See if there's play, and you can put force on the wheels side to side and see if the bearings and the hubs have any play in them.
Right.
You can at that same time notice if the bearings and the rear suspension have any play in them.
Yep.
I like the drop test.
Mm-hmm.
We did a drop test reel with Mountain Bike Allen, and a lot of people are like, oh, what can you tell from that? You think you can tell? Because some people will maybe overstate the value of. Some people overstate the idea that if the bike doesn't bounce on the drop test, that your suspension is good. And I think what that means is that it's soft at the top, mostly, which could be good for you or not. But there's a lot of other things that you could tell from a drop test, including if you have a loose water bottle bowl and I drop your bike, I'm going to be able to tell. It's going to be bzz, 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 right? Or a loose collar,
headset,
or even just a loose collar on your valve of your wheel, which it's fine. It's not hurting anything.
Right.
But once I tighten that up, I might be able to hear what the next noise is that might mean something, right? You'll generally, if you have a really loose headset or a really bad play in anything, you'll be able to tell from the drop test.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, I was riding with somebody the other day, and the drop test, like, we were just about to head out for the ride, and they were getting some stuff ready, and did the drop test, and the headset was pretty loose, so we had a chance to take care of that real quick. And
it's never a bad idea to just check all the bolts and make sure they're not coming loose.
Yep.
But my crank bolt on my relay was almost all the way out last time. I brought it in because I wanted Zach to warranty a tire for me.
Okay.
Because I just didn't want to do the process myself. And he's like, looking at my bike and playing with it. I was like, did you notice your crank bolt's loose? I was like, dang it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Right. Gosh, I'm a customer.
Gosh, I know. That's good.
Yeah. But if I had done my normal all bolts check, which I normally am in the habit of, I would have caught that. So bolts checks are good.
Yeah, for sure. Great. So get that done. Be willing to, just get ready to be in your mindset. You can spend more than a few bucks possibly on annual maintenance on your bike, but you spend a lot of money on that bike. Put a good investment in it, and it's worth the annual cost.
I like your question that you wrote down of what's the first thing you do when you test ride a bike.
Okay, let's take that. Because I pulled up to the new shop today, and I was just kind of like reviewing notes, and I saw somebody test riding a bike. And I was like, what do you do when you first test ride a new bike, whether it be yours or any other?
First thing, you got to make sure the rear brake works so you can be ready for the second thing.
Right.
Pop a wheelie.
Right. PK Crease.
I think test riding a bike is an underappreciated skill set.
Yeah.
And we spend a lot of time helping people kind of ask good questions. I think in seriousness, the first thing to do when you test ride a bike is to make sure that the saddle height is right for you and that the suspension is set up in the ballpark for you.
Right.
So, and then try to test ride them all at that same saddle height.
Right.
And even I'd go so far as even saddle position if possible. Like if you're going to slide it forward, slide it forward. If you're going to slide it back, slide it back.
Right.
In the rails. I think there's a really critical thing that happens during a test ride that either happens or doesn't happen. And it's almost it's like maybe the difference between a good test ride and like a somewhat not helpful test ride.
Right.
Which is, to me, when I'm test riding a bike, one of the main things I'm looking for is, can I sit in the saddle and pedal for a long period of time and be comfortable and make power?
Right.
And there's this thing that happens where when you get to about a 60% power effort, remember when you were doing your bike fit and I kept asking you to pedal a little harder?
Yep.
And I was looking for this thing. No, everyone does it, and you don't have to tell yourself to do it in order to make a certain amount of cadence, like speed of cadence and amount of power. Everyone slides forward, kind of leans forward.
Right.
And it's in order, if I understand correctly, in order to generate your best power, you have to bend at the waist. And that's part of activating your glutes, which are a big muscle, recruiting that power. I think that's not the whole story. I think that's even just part of the story of why you lean forward when you make power.
Right.
But when that happens, how the bike fits you change.
At that point.
If you're tooling around, pedaling soft, there's a good chance you're also sitting fairly upright.
Yep.
And as your weight shifts forward, now you can assess how you're actually going to feel on the bike, and because that's how you're going to actually ride it, is pedaling kind of hard.
Right.
Hard enough to start leaning forward, probably.
Sure.
Once you're there, the question that you can ask yourself is of how much pressure is there between your hands and the grips. So how much pressure the grip's putting on your hands, and what that really is a measure of how easily are you supporting your weight with your core in that position.
Right.
To me, it's kind of amazing how powerful of a question that is. As in, if you're riding if the bike that you have less hand pressure when you're pedaling that way in that position probably will feel better to you when you get out and ride it. Like it's like a almost foolproof one question, one answer, which bike fits better solution.
Right. Which is, again, to your point, the saddle position on where you put that saddle is could impact that
a lot.
Yeah.
For a lot of reasons too.
Right.
But one of them being the height relationship between the saddle and bars changing is a big one.
Yeah, no, so that's good. How about lifting the front wheel?
So for me, I value that a lot. And so when I test ride a bike, I always bunny hop it, wheelie it, manual it.
Right.
I also really care how a bike turns, so I'll do some hard flat turns.
Right. Yeah, because I don't manual super well. I do try to lift the front wheel off as I'm going off the curb and, get that sensation.
But even just kind of picking the front wheel up and then if I put that same effort on a different bike, which one comes up higher?
Right.
And I kind of like the one that comes up higher most of the time.
Right.
Unless it's because the bottom bracket's higher.
Right.
Because that's a way to make the front wheel come up easier that I don't always love.
Right. Hard flat corners. That's a good.
Yeah.
That's good,
Bounce,
that's
bounce, cutty, cutty, bounce, bounce.
Right. Exactly. Bounce, bounce, cutty, cutty, bounce, bounce. That's a good one.
That is a good one. It's a good way to shred signal. It's a good way to test ride a bike. It's a good way to warm up at the top of your downhill run.
Right. Right. Yeah. Anything else on test riding different bikes?
Well,
back to back.
It's a note on the suspension setup. I feel like it's almost more important to me that the front and rear suspension move together than that they be tuned a particular way. In other words, if both my front and rear are a little too firm or a little too soft, I would take that over over like maybe the front even less too soft, but closer to good, but the rear firmer. Like, in other words, like one's a little too firm, one's a little too soft. Right. I'd rather have them be more wrong, but the same.
Right.
And especially in this, I especially don't want the front suspension to move more than the back suspension. Right. Because I don't like how steep the head angle gets towards the deeper parts of the travel.
Sure.
And then the other side of that is I do like my hands to not get beat up by the bump, so I do want it as soft as the fork can be.
Right.
So I really like the test of where you center yourself, you stand up out of the saddle like you're coasting, and you make it so that pretty much all your weight's on the pedals, not on the bars,
right.
And you just bounce.
Right.
And in that situation, I want the bike to stay level. I don't want to feel like it's doing rear down, biasing towards the rear, moving more than and you can really tell if one's moving a lot more than the other. It feels kind of disruptive.
Right.
And it disrupts the geometry of the bike.
Sure. And it's definitely, if it's doing it there, it's definitely going to do it on the trails.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's great. I really appreciate that. You know, I was been thinking a lot about maybe a newer rider experience in buying bikes or getting younger ones into biking this past couple of weeks. So that's.
And I would say to the newer rider, and almost even, you know what I see almost every day in the bike shop is people who don't value their own ability to tell what's comfortable.
Right.
Or another way to say that is they assume that there must be factors to consider other than, and I think some of this even goes back to kind of an older philosophy that it's not supposed to be comfortable.
Oh, right.
I think
bike riding is supposed to hurt.
Kinda, right? Like, and if you're good at it, you're used to it or something.
Right.
I really feel like I notice over and over again that people will be like, well, this one feels more comfortable, but I don't know. It's like, no, you do know.
Right.
Like you just told me that you know.
Right.
Like,
right.
And that's after a lot of years of maybe thinking, when you're newer at this, it's easier to think maybe people don't know.
Right.
Like, oh no, good riders do this or whatever. But like, it's pretty amazing how well people can tell what's good for them if they just ask themselves. And it's really helpful to get someone to help you ask good questions too. Right. Like having someone help you set the saddle height up in a consistent height, and then having maybe someone suggest to you that you put out a certain effort. Having someone help you formulate and ask good questions for sure helps. And like make sure that you're assessing the comfort in the position you're actually going to ride the bike in.
Right.
But there's I think I even used to fall when I was often in conflict between small and medium.
Right.
The smalls would hurt my neck. And my shoulders would get tension in them, and my hands would have more pressure on them, because my hands would go numb, and it's like, but I'd be like, I don't know, I think the good riders by height ride smalls, or whatever. Like,
right.
I think I could have maybe had a better riding experience sometimes if I had just trusted what I felt. Even.
Sure.
And, it's so easy to say, like, do I just want a medium because I've got a short guy complex, right? Like,
right.
like there's so many thoughts go through your head in these things, right? Like, I do. Just kidding. I don't.
I'm getting more of one as I get older because I'm getting shorter.
I've just got a complex. It's just, I've got a chip on my shoulder in general.
It gets worse as you get a certain age because you actually do get shorter.
That's awesome. I think that's a podcast.
All right.
Thanks, Auk. Thanks, Jake. Thanks to everyone who ever comes in the path, unless it sucks. Just kidding. No. Thanks to all the riders out there. Let's all remember to love the bike we ride.